Hello there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today I'm doing a really quick tutorial on how to use hem tape. It's not an expensive product and sometimes it can make your life really easy. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can use hem tape when you're doing your sewing. Hem tape is a really fine web of interfacing and it's got glue on both sides. So when you press it between two layers of fabric, it bonds the two fabrics together, and it really does sort of almost completely disintegrate when you melt it with the iron. You can get it in different widths, or you can double up the width or cut them in half, so it's really easy to cut two into little pieces. It's quite easy to pull apart if you just want a little bit of interfacing to hold a corner or a little piece down. Hem tape can be used for emergency hemming, so if you have a trouser leg that's fell down and you need those trousers straight away, then you can use this to just hem your trousers in an emergency temporarily. Some people use it if they can't sew, to hem up children's school trousers, but it won't last too long because in the wash it will start to weaken. But if it's just an emergency for one night only, then you can just turn up a trouser leg or a cuff on a shirt or a top or around the bottom of a skirt. You can just put a little piece in, press it down, and then deal with it later. Because I can sew, and I'm guessing you are too, a sewer, which is why you're here, then you can also use hem tape if you're hemming stretch knits. So this is a sort of fleecy fabric, and because I wanted to make sure that my hems were really accurate on the split hem, so it's got like a split hem here, and I wanted to make sure that that pink line ran into the pink line and the pink line stayed straight right along the front of my Nora top sweatshirt. Then I used hem tape to hold up that pink strip so that it was really accurate when I sewed it. I didn't want the pink line to start to drift out or the next colour to start to reveal itself. I'll show you how it works. So if you've got a stretchy fabric or a t-shirt fabric and you want to hem it accurately with especially a viscose that's a little bit more sloppy than a cotton jersey, you can press up the hem. You can run it off the reel, or you can just take little pieces of it, place it underneath your pressed up fold, and you can press it as it is now, and that would give you, you could twin needle that so it would zigzag on the back and be your twin needle on the right side. You could zigzag that down, or you could turn it again. So let me just show you how the hem tape works. It's good to hold and press rather than drag. If you drag, you'll stretch the material out of shape and then glue it down in that unusual shape. So just press rather than drag. And it's still stretchy, so you haven't lost the stretch because it's such a fine webbing that the glue underneath melts with the heat. So you can see there it's a completely flat hem. It's particularly good if you've got a jersey that's got a curling edge and you're finding it difficult to hem. You can press it out, and then put the tape behind so that it doesn't curl up. If you don't want a raw edge, you can fold again, because the tape acts as the hot hemmer. It makes it easy to fold up, and you can stitch that with one row of stitching. From the right side, it makes a really crisp straight edge. So that's how you'd use hem tape on a jersey fabric. It doesn't have to be a jersey fabric. Any fabric that's difficult to handle when you're trying to hem or get a straight edge will work. So this is a viscose challis. This is called Jungle Dreamer. It's from our exclusive range, and you can do exactly the same thing. If you want to hem this with a narrower hem than this deep one, because there's quite a big seam allowance in that, you want it to be narrower, then you can press it up as if you were just pressing up your hem ready to sew. And then you can unravel it and put your hem tape inside and roll it all back up again. Because the hem webbing is really fine, it's not bulky, so you can still follow the creases that you had before, but you've not got any of the hem web exposed that will stick to your iron. That's now ready to sew with a smaller hem width. You could, if you wanted to, you could cut down the centre of hemming web. It's really easy to cut. You can make thinner strips of it if you want to work with it in smaller increments. Although it's called hem tape, you can also use it for other things. So you can use little tiny pieces of it to steady bits of fabric if you're struggling to keep something under the machine. You know, when you lift your hand to lift your presser foot, sometimes things just shift out of shape. So you can put little pieces of it and press them in particular places so you can get accurate sewing. I like to use them to apply applique patches. So if I'm patching my jeans, I put a little piece on the back of the patch so that if I'm trying to get to a really awkward place on a pair of jeans, I haven't got pins stabbing in me and I can really manoeuvre the fabric much easier under the machine and the foot if it's all just stuck down and I haven't got to manage pins at the same process. I've got a new hole in my patchwork jeans and I keep applying all different patches to these jeans. They're becoming quite a work of art. So I've cut a little piece of cord out. I drew a freehand flower shape. I've put a little bit of interfacing on the back just to stiffen it a little bit so it doesn't curl up at the edges, and I'm going to use the hem tape to stick it to my jeans so that I can sew it quite accurately under the machine. It doesn't have to go right to the petal shape. It doesn't matter that they're straight pieces. It has a little bit of static to it because it's so thin. So if you just press it down, it will stay there. And then I'm going to place it over the hole. Now I'm not sure if this is plastic or not, so I'm going to use a press cloth. And that's now stuck on there, not quite to the edges, but enough for me to manipulate that under the sewing machine. Sometimes ready bought applique patches come with sort of glue on the back, and you really have to get some high heat to melt that sort of glue, and I don't find it always very successful, so I can use a little bit of the hem tape on the back just to secure it in place so that I can zigzag around the edge or hand sew. If you've ever tried to put a label on and you find it sort of slips to one side because your machine foot is pushing the fabric away from each other, especially on a label, because a label tends to be quite a satin sort of weave, then I put a little bit of hem tape into the centerpiece of the label. Press, and now my label won't shift around quite so much. I can also use a little bit of hem tape on the back so that I can stick it in the seam allowance and make sure that I get it on at a right angle so that it doesn't sort of twist like that. But I've eliminated one twist by sticking the two pieces together. Fusible hem tape is intended to be permanent. It should be washed and it shouldn't wash away and they shouldn't come down again, but it's a good idea to make sure that you do sew it if you want to make sure that those hems stay in place. If your hem tape isn't working, then there might be a couple of reasons. you maybe haven't had your iron hot enough, so you do need it to be warm enough to melt the glue in between the fabric. So if you can't put a hot iron on your fabric choice because your fabric won't stand that heat, then you won't get the bond from the fusible hemming tape. Another reason it might not work is if you've got sort of plastics or anything that's really shiny, then sometimes the fusible tape won't work. So it's a good idea to test it on a piece first before you stick it to your actual garment, because you won't be able to pick it off afterwards. It doesn't just peel back off again. It will be a permanent gluey strip on whatever you apply it to. This quilter's basting tape is washable. This has got a paper in between it, so you peel the paper back and you can use that. It's what I used on the side seam here to match my stripes, and I know that when I wash this, then the stickiness will go away, because this one is a washable one. So you need to check in the specification what you're actually looking for the job that you need. We would love to hear if you have any ingenious uses for hem tape. It's good to share your tips. I've started to use temporary glues a lot more in my sewing. The more complex my sewing projects have become, the more I've realised that things need to be quite accurate. So I use either hem tape. I sometimes use a glue pen, which is a temporary glue, like a sort of sticky Pritt stick. And that sometimes helps me to stick just tiny areas in place. Or sometimes I use a basting tape, and this is a washable tape that you can use on seams. This tape was really good that I used it down that side seam so that my stripes were really accurately matched. So all of these little temporary glue solutions sometimes can help you get really accurate sewing at that tricky bit where you're getting really stuck. We would love to see what you've been up to, so do make a free account with us, share your makes, inspire other Minerva makers, and check out what we have on offer. We have lots of other sew-alongs too, so there's sew-alongs where we make something from the pattern to the end, pattern pairing, or other tutorials where you can learn some new sewing tips. Thank you very much for watching. Do come back soon.